Hello, friends. How are you? So, I think I've told you that I'm just about finished with my next book, which is called Digital Dharma: How to Use AI to Raise Spiritual Intelligence and Well-Being. The book is almost done. But because I was writing this book, I got into the habit of mastering in my mind the art of the prompt checking when checking, say, Google Bard, now called Gemini, or ChatGPT, and engaging the large language model, as it's called, in a conversation, and helping me with my reflection. Now, it's important to say that these days you don't have to guess. You can check any so-called fact or opinion by going through the AI prompts. Any fact or opinion or the prevailing worldview in science or philosophy or whatever. So there's no room for guessing when it comes to accessing human knowledge. And so it's a humbling experience also, because every morning I wake up with some ideas which I think could be original. And to my dismay, I find out that many people have had those ideas, the same questions, the same dilemmas, and the same tentative answers. There's hardly anything that humans haven't thought about. And that's humbling. But one thing that I've persisted in over the years is my questioning of the scientific model based on matter as the ontological primitive of the universe. I do believe that matter is a useful superstition, and that allows us to create technology and get somewhat closer to truth. But it also, this idea that there is an inherent existence of a substance called matter, is actually also hindering, in my opinion, our evolution, our understanding of biology, of the brain, of genetics, of the world in general, of the nature of the universe, of the nature of life, of the nature of existence, and ultimately our own nature. So let me share with you a little bit of the adventures this morning as I explored some of the most fundamental questions that I had in my mind. So my first question this morning from Gemini was, are photons material entities? If they have no rest mass, how can we consider them material entities? Here's the answer. Whether or not photons can be considered a material entity is a complex question with nuances depending on how you define material entity. Here's a breakdown of perspectives. Traditional definition of material. Traditionally, materials are associated with having rest mass, the mass of an object at rest. Since light has no rest mass, it wouldn't fit this definition of a material entity. Then it says, modern physics perspective. Modern physics acknowledges that light possesses energy and momentum even without rest mass. It exhibits properties like exerting pressure and interacting with matter, suggesting it's more than just a wave phenomenon. In this sense, some physicists argue that light can be considered a material entity, albeit unique to its masslessness. Ultimately, the concept of material is somewhat subjective, good point, and depends on what properties you consider essential for materiality. Okay, so let's go over that. As you can see, the answer is ambiguous. Photons could be material, but maybe not. Then I asked a question about neuroplasticity. I said, and epigenetics. So, neuroplasticity, also known as brain plasticity, is a fascinating concept that refers to the brain's remarkable ability to change and adapt throughout life. This isn't just about learning new things, but about the brain physically rewiring itself on experiences. Neural networks. Your brain is made up of billions of interconnected nerve cells called neurons. These connections, called synapses, are constantly changing and forming anew. This continual reorganization is the essence of neuroplasticity. Your experience triggers these changes. Learning a new language, recovering from a stroke, even simply reading this explanation, all these events influence the way your brain functions and organizes itself. And then I said, well, is this connected to neuroplasticity? Is this connected to, say, what we call um, um, epigenetics? And here's the answer. Your understanding of connection between neuroplasticity experiences and epigenetics is on the right track. There is indeed mounting evidence suggesting that experiences such as meditation, yoga, exercise, breathing techniques, and vagal stimulation can affect neuroplasticity through epigenetic modulation, leading to gene activation and changes in the brain. Experiences in epigenetics. Studies have shown that various experiences can trigger epigenetic changes in brain cells. Epigenetics refers to chemical modifications that influence gene expression without altering the DNA sequence itself. These modifications can affect which genes are turned on or off, impacting brain function and structure. Mechanism of change, the exact mechanism still being researched, but here are some. DNA methylation, adding methyl groups to DNA can turn genes off, while removing them can turn them on. Histone modifications, chemical changes to histone proteins around DNA can make it more or less accessible for gene transcription. Non-coding RNAs, these molecules can regulate gene expression by interacting with DNA or other RNAs. Then gives examples of exercise, meditation, breathing techniques, etc., etc. So this, of course, led me to ask if there was a role for epigenetics and therefore consciousness in the evolution of species. And so it said the following. The influence of experience on the evolution of species through epigenetics is a fascinating and complex area of ongoing research. While the science is still young and evolving, there's evidence to suggest that experiences may play a role in shaping evolution. So then I went a little further and said, does this open the window for consciousness playing a role in evolution? And see what it said. It said, while the extent to which consciousness itself plays a role in evolution is highly debated, the link between experience and adaptation has led to some to draw parallels with Lamarckism, a discredited theory, suggesting acquired traits could be directly influenced. However, the proposed mechanisms in epigenetics and phenotypic plasticity does offer some interesting ideas that phenotypic plasticity allows individuals to adapt. It doesn't directly influence the direct DNA sequence. Then I went and said, you're not answering my question. The question was about does epigenetics influence the evolution of species? I said, you're right. My previous response was a bit short on specifics. When it comes to the impact of epigenetics and experience on evolution, the answer is quite complex, involves ongoing research. Epigenetics and experience can indeed influence the evolution of species in several ways, potentially suggesting a role for consciousness in the process, at least theoretically. Epigenetic inheritance, while epigenetic changes generally don't alter the DNA sequence passed on to offspring, some evidence suggests transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, where environment factors and experiences and phenotypic memory allow populations to adapt. And then it says um, basically that there is more evidence that consciousness could influence evolution. These interactions highlight the complexity of evolution, raise interesting questions about the potential role of consciousness. Okay, so why is this even important? Well, for 35 years, I've been proposing that if we understand consciousness as the ontological primitive, that it'll lead to a new revolution in us understanding of how to change the landscape of the brain, how to influence genetic activity, how to influence our biology, how to influence our perception of the world, and how to actually know that even fundamental particles and space and time and energy and matter and all that we call quarks and bosons and all these subatomic particles with their complexities of wave particle duality. These are human names for modes of knowing and experience in consciousness. And science is the best model we have to understand that what we are looking at, whether it's a Higgs boson or a force field or gravity or subatomic particles or gene activity or the neural landscape of the brain, including neuroplasticity, these are all experiences that we have given names. Then we have, concretized that experience into a substance called matter, which then behaves in such and such ways, and how that constructs everything from plants to humans to other biological species and the whole universe. That's the problem. That problem will never be addressed if we believe in the superstition of matter, useful though it is for constructing the map or the model of the human universe. And unless we do that, science will not evolve because science right now cannot answer these questions. Why do we exist? Who are we? What's the purpose of existence? But if you take consciousness only as the model, as Planck said, nothing behind consciousness, then it addresses everything from perception to cognition to how we create models, how we structure our biology, how we process information, how we interact with the world, or even more, how we create the world and the experience of the world. So AI is useful in helping us deconstruct the models we have, even with the prevailing opinions and the people who have thought of these questions before us, both philosophers and scientists and other people who've engaged in introspection, self-reflection, inquiry, and the direct method of experience. And once we understand this, and then our identity shifts from models of reality to that which creates the models of reality, then there's much comfort because we realize ourselves as the timeless beings who are ultimately conceiving, constructing, governing, and becoming the universe. Let me know your thoughts. Of course, I've had arguments about this with Richard Dawkins, with evolutionary biologists, and they roll up their eyes anytime I open my mouth and again dismiss everything I'm saying as pseudoscience. But so be it. We're going to persist in this argument, and we're going to use all the science to show that the future of well-being, the future of humanity, and the future of the cosmos depends on the evolution of our own consciousness.